What's going on, guys? Kalipus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Umidigi A11. I'm going to be going over everything you need to know about this phone to decide whether or not it's the right one for you. So let's get started. Now, before we get into the phone itself, let's take a look at what comes in the box. So we got a phone case here. And it's really nice that it actually comes with a case, because although this does happen from time to time, I want to say the majority of phones don't actually come with a case. And even though this is nothing special, it's more of a case to hold you over until you get a more permanent one. It is nice that they include it. We got the quick start guide in here, and I really like this little packaging. It's unique and high quality, and overall is just a tiny detail that makes it look even nicer. We also got a SIM card removal tool right here, can't miss that. We got a wall adapter, and of course, a USB-C charging cable. So now, let's get back to the phone itself. This phone has a 6.53-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 269, and an aspect ratio of 20:9. We got a water drop notch right here for the front-facing camera, and this camera is 8 megapixels. Right now, I do have the brightness set to 100%, and I would say that even though the display is only 720p and it's an LCD display, which is nothing special, it does look really nice. The phone itself is not really the thinnest. It does have a kind of chunky design, but it's not too bad. It does have some weight to it, which I personally really like because it makes it feel a little bit higher end. In addition to that, the display size itself is pretty large, so it's going to be good for content consumption. Whether you're streaming videos, viewing photos, even reading, all of it's going to look better on a large display like this. The back is made of a matte material that picks up fingerprints less than the glossy materials you see in some other phones, but at the same time, it still has the fingerprints on there, and they're more visible than they are on some other phones. Overall, despite a few little imperfections I see in the phone's design, I do for the most part like it. Now, this phone has 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD card expansion, so that is a lot of storage, especially for this phone's price range. This phone really is only an entry-level phone, so for it to have 128 gigabytes of internal storage is really impressive. You're going to be able to do a lot with this phone as far as that goes. Whether you're a power user who likes to keep a bunch of apps and photos and videos, or you're just a casual user who doesn't even have a lot, it's always good to have more storage, because even if you don't think you're going to need it, apps and the system and pretty much everything are all getting larger and larger, so having more storage is a good idea. And if you are one of those power users who has a lot of photos and videos, keep in mind you can keep that stuff on the microSD card as well, so you don't have to take up space on the phone itself. Another thing I do want to mention is that there is another variant of this phone that only has 64 gigabytes of internal storage, but this specific phone that we're looking at today is the variant that has 128. Now, there's no wireless charging with this phone, which makes sense because usually that feature is more for higher end phones, but there is a fingerprint scanner right here on the power key, one of my favorite spots for a fingerprint scanner, as well as face unlock. Let's go ahead and give that fingerprint scanner a try and see how well it works. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, not only is the fingerprint scanner conveniently placed, but it's also really fast and responsive, so there are no issues there. For the camera setup here on the back, we got a 16 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 5 megapixel macro camera, as well as this little thermometer right here. Now, I read about this before I saw it. I actually took a really long time to notice this, even though it was right in front of my face the whole time, but this is where the thermometer is, in case you were wondering. This phone does have a really good camera setup. Whether you're a more casual user of the camera who still values a good photo or two, maybe you like portrait mode, something simple like that, or if you like to use the more advanced features like the ultra wide camera or the macro camera, this phone really has something for everyone. And in addition to just having the features, this is a photo taken with the rear camera of the phone. As you can see, it's a really high quality photo. The colors look really nice and super vivid for only being from an entry-level phone. In addition to that, the sharpness is really good, and I like how the camera handled the lighting as well. This is a photo taken with the ultra-wide camera of the phone. The photo is not only really wide, but it also has minimal distortion around the edges, which is something that's super common in these lower end phones. Usually the distortion is a lot worse than it is on this phone. And with this phone, the ultra-wide camera really retains the quality of the normal camera, which I'm a big fan of. This is a photo taken with the macro camera. Now, one thing about this macro camera, it was a little bit tricky to get it to focus, but when it does focus, it looks really nice, and I'm really a big fan of this macro camera, and I'm not really even that into macro cameras. I don't see a whole lot of a point to them, but this macro camera did impress me quite a bit. For video, this phone is able to shoot in 1080p in both the rear and front cameras. But keep in mind that since the display is only 720p, you can only view videos on this phone in that resolution, so you'll need a different device that does actually have a 1080p display to be able to see the videos that you shoot in their actual resolution. Internally, the Umidigi A11 is getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio G25 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 152 and a multi-core score of 827. So really not bad in and of itself, but compared to other phones in its price range, it's a little bit disappointing. It's not really that impressive. If processing power is one of your primary concerns, you can do quite a bit better. That being said, the phone does run really well and everything has gone smoothly. I've had no performance issues during my time using this phone. One thing I would suggest though is doing the Geekbench 5 benchmark test on your own phone and comparing it to this one to see if this phone would be an upgrade. Now, as far as battery goes, this phone has a 5150 milliamp hour battery. So this is a really good sized battery. You're not only going to get tons of life per charge, but you're also going to have lots of longevity. So down the road, once the battery starts to wear out, you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly as some other phones that have smaller batteries. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a long period of time, this is going to be really good for that purpose. Now, some other things you might want to know about this phone. It does have Android 11, not quite a stock Android skin, but it is Android 11 all the same. So if you do want that newer version of Android compared to the older Android 10 that's in a lot of phones in this price range, then this is going to be a good thing in favor of this phone. It doesn't have NFC, which is a little disappointing, but not too surprising because lower end phones are still not quite getting that. Mid-range phones are really starting to get NFC. There are tons of them with it, but unfortunately, you won't be able to use stuff like Google Pay on this phone. Now, one other feature this phone has that very few phones in this price range and out have is this button right here, and this is actually a smart key. This smart key can be used for all kinds of different things, and you can change what it does through the settings. Now, if you want to get a little bit more information about exactly how to use this key, definitely subscribe to the channel because I will be going over all of that in depth in my tips and tricks video for this phone. But long story short, this smart key is super useful for all kinds of different things. And if you do like phones that have more unique different features to make using the phone a lot easier, more convenient, and sometimes even more fun, then this phone is a great choice for that because it has lots of different features that other phones don't. So now that we've gone over some of the specs and features of the phone, let's take a closer look at the hardware. On the left side of the phone, we got the slot for the SIM card and micro SD card and the smart key. At the bottom here, we got the microphone, a USB-C charging port, and the speaker. On the right side of the phone, we got the power key that also doubles as a fingerprint scanner and the volume keys. On the top of the phone, we have a 3.5mm headphone jack. And on the back, we got the thermometer, as well as the camera setup and the flash. There's the Umidigi logo on the bottom right corner of the phone, as well as their slogan on the left side. Overall, like I said before, this phone has a little bit of a chunky design, and I'm not a huge fan of it. I do kind of like the squared off edges. It looks cool, but at the same time, it's not very thin or sleek. So if you're looking for that kind of design, you will be disappointed with this phone, but I will say it does have a decent weight to it, especially for an entry-level phone like this. In this lower end, usually they're made out of cheap plastic and feel so light that it almost feels hollow sometimes. But this phone, you can really feel the weight, and it feels a lot higher end. The materials don't feel cheap at all, and I'm generally satisfied with this design. So in conclusion, my final thoughts about the Umidigi A11. I actually think this is a really good phone, especially for its price range. Now there are some features that when compared to mid-range and higher end phones are pretty weak, but at the same time, this phone is just an entry-level phone, and compared to lots of other phones in its price range, it's actually a lot better. It has a large display that's going to be real good for content consumption, a ton of storage even if you get the lower variant, a fingerprint scanner in one of the most convenient spots on the power key, a real good camera setup that takes high quality photos and has a lot of features as well. More unique things like a smart key and a thermometer, and of course, a giant battery that's gonna last you for a long time. So overall, if you're looking for an entry-level phone with a decently nice design and lots of unique features, and processing power isn't at the top of your priorities, then the Umidigi A11 is gonna be a good option. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you found this information useful as well. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And if you happen to be watching this video after you bought the phone, definitely stay tuned because I will be releasing a beginner's guide and a tips and tricks video and more for this phone to help you get started with it. But that's it for today, guys. As always, I will see you in the next video.